back. This is the Something Measured podcast. I am Kent Lindstrom. I am your host. We have on the podcast today a guy. I'm going to give you a little bit of a description about how I think you should listen to this podcast. The guest is a guy named Jeff Macpherson. He was more famously, in an earlier stage in his career, known as Dr. Tiki. If you don't know what that is, go get on YouTube, look up Tiki Bar TV. You want to see it. It's a award-winning web series about a magical cocktail lounge. Yeah, you heard me right. But as you listen to this podcast, he talks about the early days of video. And I just want to kind of take you back to a time when YouTube was emerging and the iPhone was emerging around the same time. And at the time, you need to remember that it wasn't super clear. YouTube was a mess. Everything on it was just horrible. It wasn't clear that what it was doing was legal, putting up other people's content. The theory evolved that actually it would be a creative outlet where people would be creating web series. We know that's not what happened today. Obviously, it's workout videos and people pranking their girlfriend and haul videos and influencer-focused things. But a lot of web series that compete with traditional TV have not emerged. At the same time, YouTube is on one side, Apple is on another side, and they've released the iPhone, the iPod, and there's podcasts. And not to get too technical, but podcasts are delivered to you via an RSS feed. But just think about how you get podcasts. And at some point, as you may have heard on the episode with Pete Alcorn, somebody just said, hey, can we run a video through this RSS feed thing? And the answer was yes. So you could get videos at the time, just like you would get a podcast. Just download onto your phone. And one day, when they were promoting this feature, the person on my podcast, Jeff Macpherson, had a show called this Tiki Bar TV that was a kind of webisode show. Fantastic. You should go watch it if you haven't. And on stage, promoting the iPhone, Steve Jobs references this show. And so what you're hearing in this podcast is sort of a time when it was not inevitable that YouTube would be the thing that it is today with every video and, kind of recorded human history and easy to find. It was kind of a sludge pile. And the possibility that you would get videos like podcasts, like why not? And why don't you get podcasts online on a platform like YouTube? So that's just a little bit of background. You're really going to enjoy this conversation with Mr. Tiki. I'm telling you, watch the video first. Jeff Macpherson. All right, welcome back. This is the Something Measured podcast. I'm Kent Lindstrom. I am your host. My guest today is Jeff Macpherson. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
This is going to be fantastic. So Jeff is also known as Dr. Tiki from Tiki Bar TV. And if you don't know what it is, stop right now, pause the podcast, go on YouTube, I guess you would do today.
Yeah, or you can go to tikibartv.com.
Yep.
Where they're all embedded there.
And go watch it. He's also the co-founder of Motive.io, which we'll explain what that is. But, I worked at Friendster for a period of time, so I have that experience where that's all people want to talk about me, even though it's been like, I've done other things with my life.
Right, right.
like since then, but it's so fascinating for people that, you get wrapped up in it. I assume that happens to you.
Yeah, it does. I don't mind it quite so much because I created the show along with some friends and created the character Dr. Tiki.
And we should explain what Tiki Bar TV is for people who didn't actually go listen to it, which is, well, you explain it.
Okay.
It was a big thing.
It got much bigger
time
than I expected or was ready for.
Yeah.
So it was a very early online web series, and at a time when most of I think I could probably name them. There's probably like 5 memorable ones, but maybe 20 in total, and they were all.
Is that it? It seems like there were like a million.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I'll be proven wrong by the Googlers, but
sure.
I think it was March of 2005 that I first put out an episode, and it was after having seen Rocket Boom out of New York.
Yeah.
Everything was sort of a nonfiction news magazine. I don't know what you call it, but they weren't doing anything scripted with characters.
Yeah.
So the idea was really, won't this be a gag if I put out a web series where we're actually pretending it's going to be a real show.
Yeah.
And that was the conceit, that it was never meant to look like a real show. It was meant to look like people who were not quite pulling off a show,
Right.
like late night local television shows in my area, like out of Bellingham, that would introduce late night old B movies, and so they would sometimes do sketches. And I just kind of wanted it to look and feel like that, and that if you watch this show, you were a part of the fiction, like you were playing along, also pretending this was a show,
Right.
And I guess I should say what the premise is, which evolved because we didn't really have much of a premise. I had an apartment, a bachelor pad that was decorated like a tiki bar already, because I was being a bit eccentric, and I had an old Halloween costume that was a doctor, and my friend Kevin Gamble, he's a animation producer, cartoon producer. He was like, there's a show, Rocket Boom, and they're doing kind of like a TV show, but on the internet, and you can subscribe to it by RSS feed. And I was like, well, we should pretend that we've got a show. And so he became the bartender, and because we just had to give him something to do. My friend Lala, who's Lara Doucette, we had her over because we thought, it's always guys on these shows, so we need to have some women represented.
They call it TGT now, two guys talking.
Right, and it was that. It was that at the time. Here, and this is proof right here.
The problem is it also works for three guys talking, so it's not a very specific.
Okay, but yeah, it's a genre. And so we created this show, and we decided there was going to be a problem, because that's what you need in a story, and that there was going to be a cocktail recipe given at the end, so that the thing appeared to have a purpose, and that helped us. And the show, evolved from very crude. I was resistant to lighting it or using any equipment because in my day work, I was a filmmaker, and I didn't want this to feel like work. But Kevin insisted that we use mics and lights, and I was like, all right. And then eventually Gio Corsi, a great friend of mine, who's also he was director at PlayStation for like 5 or 6 years. All these guys have day jobs, but he's like, look, you need a villain, and I'll be the villain. I'm going to be a Russian ambassador. And so kind of it evolved almost like an improv troupe, or everybody involved was just out to have fun. And then it turned into a show, and then there's the incredible moment, I would say, when Apple reached out.
Yeah. So if you haven't watched, it's just incredibly satisfying. There was something about it that was just so compelling. It was sort of like it had an act where Lala would like dance around, then there'd be some central action and some resolution, and then just finishing with the cocktail recipe was just so, I don't know. I just found it so compelling.
That's neat. It's because there were lots of people watching, and of course when we were making it, we had almost no crew. Towards the end, we had some crew, but it feels very intimate, almost like as intimate as this with you and I right now. That we're just a few of us. There'd be a camera, and you feel very relaxed to just sort of experiment and say ridiculous things.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to run into people, and I do try and understand what they liked about it. I know what I kind of tried to stuff it with strange references to pop culture and unusual half humor that I don't think you would see elsewhere.
Right.
But yeah, I'm curious to hear from you. Do you remember what other people? Why did they like it?
I don't remember. Like it was just it was all the pieces of it were just so perfect. Like Lala was just this strange, like attractive, but like dancing, and then the conflicts were just peculiar, and I don't know. There was just something about it, like that you can't describe. And then I just thought the cocktail at the end was hilarious. Like just the kind of break. Right. Here's how you make the cocktail. It was just like such a nice piece of timing.
It was. What's interesting is, it was for writers out there, it's the sin of writing, which is to have a Deus Ex Machina, to have a basically magic come down at the last moment and just solve the problem.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what it was, and we knew that's what it was. And we could go. The fun thing is we could go anywhere with the premise, and know that we always had an ending.
Yeah.
We were going to just hit you with the doctor was going to prescribe a cocktail to solve the problem, hand that over to the bartender who's going to make it. Everybody drinks it, and through one way or another, a cheesy post-production effect, the problem is solved.
And then the kind of theatricality of it was almost like, well, this commedia dell'arte, like it was like a very specific form, like a very exaggerated, manneristic form of.
Yeah, I was
TV.
also, I guess, influenced by bad by today's standards, 1950s, 1960s TV shows, sitcoms where the father knows best.
Yeah.
And, well, I'm going to tell you this and tell you that. And it was very stereotype. It was kind of trying to be told from a naive 1950s American male point of view.
Yeah.
Stuffed in there with, I guess, cardboard robots.
Yeah. Right, there's a robot.
Yeah.
So good. And so the show's going, but meanwhile at Apple, podcasting
So that was
is emerging,
interesting,
right?
Yeah. And I had originally, we were using pseudonyms, and I was hiding my real name because I was pursuing a career in film and had already had some success in the film festival circuit and was in development with MTV to do a miniseries. And it was that development hell, as they call it, strung along for a while, and then eventually the series collapsed. That had me sitting in my apartment in a funk, going, well, here's a creative outlet, I'm going to do this. Yeah. But certainly nobody in the professional filmmaking business can know that it's me because it was amateurish.
Right.
And so, but I was so fascinated by and fixated on online video, and I remember really believing it and thinking, this is incredible, because I can shoot and produce and broadcast without a broadcast license video around the world for free.
Yeah.
I mean, not really for free, but relatively. We'll get into that later. If your show's a hit, you had to pay.
Right.
But then I started to, go through savings, and people were saying, well, what are you doing? Like, at that point, the size of the video had to be very compressed because broadband was not, Jay hadn't done all his work yet.
Right.
Jay Adelson, that is, who built out fiber. But so it was 320 pixels. I remember 320 by 240 at 15 frames a second. So my mom saw it, and she's like, oh, it was so sad seeing her little son making this weird video show for the internet when she'd just seen him, I guess, a year or two prior, my show up on a giant screen at a theater. And it was getting bad. And then financially, and then I was doubting everything. But then an email comes through from Apple, which I actually just read this morning, and it was, hey, we're fans of Tiki Bar at Apple. And I'm just like, what? At this point, I think I had like 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers. Maybe it was like 8,000 or 9,000 subscribers. Right. And but I knew that most of the people were these were bright people. These were a lot of engineers and technicians, tech people, because that's you had to make a lot of effort to watch a show like this. And then, Apple said they wanted to use Tiki Bar in a promotion, and they were very cagey about it. I guess Pete Alcorn was involved in that as well, and they were fans of the show. So you have some inside information about that, right?
Yeah, my understanding is that they had. So this is a little technical, and I'm not a technical person, but the way podcasting works, video, and the way YouTube work are different. A podcast is actually hosted by the podcaster. You host it, and then this technology called RSS is what's used to distribute it. YouTube, you just put up your video, and they pay for all the bandwidth and all that. And they almost went out of business, too. If they hadn't really been bought by Google and funded, that wouldn't have worked. But my understanding is that Apple built this technology, this podcasting technology, and they just weren't planning on doing video. And my understanding is that somebody there posed the question, like, would this work for video? And the engineers were kind of like, I don't know why it wouldn't. And rather than have a long discussion, I think they tried it and realized they could do video over RSS. And I guess that is when they came to you and said, hey, we need something to highlight this thing.
Yeah, they did. And I remember Chai at Day reaching me. So I agreed to it. Yeah, I'll work with you on this for sure. They wouldn't tell me what it was for. I knew there was a Steve Jobs keynote coming up. and I made the mistake of asking if it was related to that. And I remember I was on speakerphone with somebody. They were passing me around. Nobody wanted to answer my questions, so I was being passed around on the phone. I was on speakerphone with somebody, director of something. And he goes, "Hey." I get patched through to him, and he's like, "Hey, who is this? Oh, you're the Tiki guys. Wow, it's a crazy show. Why do you guys do that?" That's fun. That's fun. Anyways, we're fans of it over here. And you go, "Is this something to do with the keynote coming up?" And immediately, like, I go off speakerphone. And he goes, "Who told you that?" I'm like, Nobody. I was just asking." "Oh, no, we'll talk about it next week." And next week was, of course, after this keynote or something like that. So I kept my mouth shut. But so Chiat Day or Chiat Day, can't remember what the pronunciation is. But the big ad agency that did the 1984, the famous Macintosh launch commercial, they reach out to me and they're like, "We were like your digibeta broadcast master for some of your episodes." And I'm like, "Well, I don't think you've seen the show." We were shooting on DV. Yeah. On a camera that was never meant to be filmed on, like from a drawer. And they managed, I don't know, they're geniuses over there. They managed to somehow take a frame of that low resolution show and blow it up absolutely like monolithic, massive to show, I guess they printed them and had them on banners in some Apple stores and also projected behind Steve Jobs. Yeah, so when he rolled out the iPod that supported video, he just ran this clip for a moment, and I remember seeing the video. I guess they had stopped streaming it live at that period, his keynotes, because of a problem of some kind. There was a tech problem previously, and so we were following a German blog that someone was translating, I guess live blogging, if that was even possible.
Right.
So we were like 20 minutes late before hearing a word that they had run this Tiki Bar clip, and then later seeing this video of him saying, "For those of you who've seen Tiki Bar," something to that effect, and he rolls a clip of it, and he goes, "We probably shouldn't get into this too much." And the whole audience laughed, and I'm like, "What's going on? Are people watching this show?" It was extraordinary because it was a case of, and I think like founders find this a lot, and I was inadvertently, I guess, a founder. Sure. I was just trying to make a show that you toil away in isolation, and it appears when you have success that it was inevitable and that you must be comfortable and familiar with being on stage, or you're aware of the size of the crowds that are watching. But, whether it's hundreds of thousands or millions, they're not all watching in a crowd. And it's kind of always just stunning. And have you found that with?
Yeah, for me, it's the thinking of the physics. Like when I've run companies or been part of things where 100,000 or 1 million people are, online. You're kind of cool about it. But then you think about standing in front of 100,000 people.
Right.
Think about you go to a baseball game and you were going to go up to the microphone and sing a song in front of 30,000 people.
Right.
Well, 100,000 people is 3 times that watching your video. And then that's not even a lot. What do 1 million people possibly even look like, much less 10 million and 45 million and those kinds of numbers?
I know. I used to early on when I would go to a stadium and I would check out the capacity. We're at capacity of 30,000 or something. I don't think the stadiums are that big that I went to, but I would go, wow, and I would start calculating. All these people times this are watching the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's incredible. So what happens when Steve Jobs do you start getting phone calls?
It was interesting.
That's literally the most famous person who could.
Yeah, and I was such a fanboy too. I admired him so much at that time. Anyways, and there was sort of like a delay of 48 hours, maybe. I thought for me, it seemed like a lot. I thought, well, is anything gonna happen? I wait for the phone to ring, which is typical like content creator, I guess. That's the old school of content creation, which is I did a thing. Who important's gonna notice?
Yep.
And then I started to get contacted. I should say, are you hosted by Libsyn, by the way?
Yeah.
See, I love those guys. I love them too. Libsyn,
Dave and Dave.
Yeah, Dave and Dave. Yeah, and Chris, Mansueto and Shakan. Those guys are extraordinary, and they were so supportive, and essentially eventually became a sponsor. But at the time, I didn't really understand or recognize that that's what they were doing. They were. I don't think that was ever under NDA, but they genuinely wanted to see the show keep going, so they pre-bought ad time. And at that time, I think we were entering 2008. It was a real hard sell to fill that ad space. And knowing what I know now, and also me at Motive.io being we have sponsored some events. You know what it feels like when they don't, when they don't treat you like a sponsor. And if I could go back in time, I really would have treated these. I would have flogged and sold. Wizard Media was a parent company, but Libsyn, because not only were they great to me, but they kept the show alive. And in that kind of relationship with a sponsor, you hear about it, but I always thought it would be very transactional. And maybe it is in some cases, but for podcasters and I think perhaps YouTubers, it is. It's a precious relationship, I think.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. I don't think everyone thought it would bother people so much more. And I don't know if it...
I thought so too. I really thought so too.
Like there was that... I mean, people forget when Amazon came out, there was kind of this... selling online. People are like, oh, that's not what the internet's for. That's wrong. And so, I don't know, there's something about it, like going back to that old-time radio, like, my favorite soap is Ivory. And now, Mike Rowe has a podcast, the guy who does Dirty Jobs. And it's pretty funny. He tells a story about somebody, but you don't know who the person is. It's called That's the Way I Heard It. And you don't know who the person is until the last minute. So it'll all be about like Ben Franklin. It'll be describing somebody. You're like, who is that? It's Ben Franklin. But he does a very intimate beginning. And I think ZipRecruiter is his sponsor.
Right.
But he talks about how much he likes them. He gives an example about how he uses them himself.
Right.
He ties it to whatever topic he's doing for the day. And it's a little bit of 45-second entertainment about ZipRecruiter. And it doesn't bother me. And I get that he's doing work and paying.
And I feel good about, you feel good about the advertisers for the most part. And I do check them out. I mean, the reason I'm on Audible, it was probably because they're everywhere. I think it's because of This Week in Tech or, listening to them deliver their bit, and I know there's an honesty. I mean, I expect them to be, if they're going to tell a little story about how they actually like the product, that they're going to be honest. Otherwise, just kind of read the copy is fine as well.
Yeah.
But Libsyn came along at a time when you're quite right. You had to host your own. Unlike YouTube, you had to pay your hosting fee. So what we were doing with Tiki Bar, and it was kind of exciting in the early days. You would buy a domain. I believe you'd buy hosting, but you had to have a domain associated with it. And it would come with a certain amount of bandwidth per month, and it would roll over in 24 hours at midnight or something.
Right.
So we had a bunch of just websites that were just for hosting episodes. And I would stagger them. So the newest few episodes had to be on different sites, so they were technically, on different bandwidth. So we were juggling these episodes around, and I had to manage... when a site of ours would go offline because we'd exceeded our limit, then had to switch the feed for where that episode was pointing to. So we're kind of juggling these things in real time. And me and my buddy Kevin, I remember we were on the phone, like laughing to each other. Right. Or I guess we were on AOL chat. And what ICQ? What was the chat at the time? Anyways.
Yeah, ICQ. Probably,
ICQ. Yeah. What were those sounds for ICQ? Do you remember? They were all really cutesy, weird.
I remember the modem sounds, of course.
Yeah.
I used to know what that meant too. Like I used to know.
You did know what it meant.
Yeah,
you could identify what each tone was doing.
Yeah, I think they're basically like, "Hi, I'm a modem. Hi, I'm a modem too. Let's connect."
Right.
I think were basically what they were saying.
I remember from the days of Commodore, there was like a carrier detect, handshake, maybe handshake.
Yeah.
Connection. There was lots of dots being animated. Tick, 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 tick.
Right.
Yeah, and then it would get horrible. That was a good sound. The horrible noises were the meant there was a connection actually forming.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember modems and printers were the same. Printers are the same now, which is there's just every once in a while they just stop connecting, and you unplug, replug them in, and I turned to my coworkers a few days ago, just going like, it's the same. Modems got fixed,
Right.
but
Printers are inscrutable. Like when they get stuck or paused, and there's some weird tray image. You're like, what? I don't know what to do. Like, I probably shouldn't print things.
Or why it can't? It says like, oh, do you want what is it? Canon image class 445 parenthesis 2 parenthesis 3 parenthesis 4.
Right.
And I'm like, look, we all know it's the same printer we're talking about.
Right.
Why are you creating clones
Are there
and connecting to none of them?
Right.
We're probably off topic, aren't we?
No, no. Printers was what I really came to talk about. What does so after so how does the show start growing, and how does it manifest?
So let me just say this: the guys over at Libsyn, who formed Libsyn, which stood for Liberated Syndication, was really a big deal, revolutionary, and they got funded, and now they're exactly where they should be.
Yeah.
Which is,
isn't that funny that like podcasting absolutely came around?
You have to see the future.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
everybody uses Libsyn.
I can imagine like props to the investors who could see, who could see past, I call it the bias of the status quo, which my precious mother had when she was like, but why would I want to watch a video on a little tiny video like that? Right. I'm like, no,
Right.
You don't get it. It's not about the size of this video clip right now on this tiny screen. It's that they were really solving a problem, and that was every other. What was it? It was offering storage was the big thing, the package that you could buy from a cloud service, and bandwidth was not that important, and it was quite limited. These guys did the opposite. These guys were, I think it was unlimited bandwidth with rather restricted storage,
right.
But it enabled podcasters, and I think to this day, to make it viable.
Like all the big podcasters use Libsyn, like
right.
Mark Maron and like you name it.
All of them, yeah,
they're on Libsyn.
And there was and they're, it's so cool that they're still going because they're All right.
So how does Tiki Part 2? So it starts growing on the podcasting podcasting RSS world, while YouTube over on the side begins to emerge at the same time.
Yeah, that was interesting. So YouTube was not a place that anybody who was making anything really respectable, right, or making anything, I would say, no one was putting anything there. You would upload to share video clips or someone else's IP. Famously, I guess it was an SNL sketch,
Lazy Sunday.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. And then I remember because I was on stage with legal counsel for I guess NBC, and one of the founders of YouTube, Chad, and I was like, how did I get up here? And it was like a Forbes panel in LA, and I was between these two, and I'm just like, are they going to go at it? And they did in a diplomatic way,
right? But
I think that off stage they were coming to some important agreements, right. But then the first things, I guess, the first content creators. I didn't like the culture. There was a lot of talking to the camera, and there's a style of talking to the camera which I see is prevalent now, which is neat once and disappointing ever since, which is cutting out every single pause.
Oh,
it's the jump cut, and Zay Frank was the first guy to do it, and it was cool and funny, and that was with a video podcast. And now it seems to be expected. So you have literally, they don't try to hide the cut. There's a jump cut, right, but boom, bang, 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 bang. And that tells me two things. One is that they've not mastered the skill of public speaking and dramatic pause.
Right.
And also, pauses is where the viewer gets to contemplate your idea.
Right.
But it has to be an idea.
Right.
And so I didn't want to put my stuff there. I also did not like the culture of the comments. I thought they were really hostile, and nasty. And
I mean, to this day, they're pretty.
They still are. They're pathetic.
It's a certain group that just comments, and it's just kind of like, just like it's like one person creates something and everyone else is just like, you suck.
Yeah.
or you're hot, or even when you're even when
sad.
your videos about like
Yeah.
neuroscience or something, or it's I don't know, it's not an enlightened discussion triggered by the video.
No, I mean, let alone the spelling. I'm like, doesn't everything already have a built-in spell checker now?
Right.
But no, it's hostile. We had such an incredible community. We started on Blogger. I think the domain is still there, tikibartv.blogspot.com.
Wow.
And that, because I remember asking around my friends, how do I create an RSS feed? Or how do I attach video to RSS feed? And most of them said, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. And this was not a good sign, because these were web admins.
Right.
And then I just found out that Blogger, if you posted a blog, it had an RSS feed already generated available, so you would share that. So that's how we published originally, a blog post that was just the video. I think that's all that could get pulled down.
And how does the show change then after you get this fame from Apple and Steve Jobs?
Well, this great sense of excitement, and then there was this thought of like, okay, how do we well, it wasn't a business yet, but then it started to become a business, and that's when I met with Tosca Musk, who became an incredible partner. Right. She's a movie producer, and in fact was producing movies, and was somehow convinced to come meet with me because there was this guy who was doing kind of crazy stuff on the internet. And she was not impressed when she first saw it, because she was working still in super 35 millimeter motion picture film. Right. And this could not be smaller than that. But I think she got intrigued and said, well, I'll work with you for a bit to help you, turn what's a hobby, which essentially people show up to set when they want, when they can, to more of a structured thing. Because, yes, money was starting to come in from sponsors and from people, frankly, wanting to invest. All of it coming from the United States, interestingly, because we were in Vancouver, Canada, and that was interesting, because it's something I didn't think about. When you start something without structuring it as a business, or without the mind of how will this, I guess, scale is the right term, even though, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to scale it. I'm not sure that we ever did.
Right. And so does it start, like, did you now get the yips or anything and start, like, acting? Like, were you more nervous when you were acting, knowing that, like,
it's so
people are watching?
There was someone who came up from LA, a producer, wearing sunglasses in the corner of the apartment, just sort of check out what we were doing, and that really changed the dynamic, because there was really no off camera, right? In a normal show, you do have an off camera. There's lights, there's equipment, and there's whoever's out of your eye line, and you're trained and kind of ready to ignore that. So it doesn't really make a difference who's visiting set, but it's a small apartment,
right?
And then so we decided we had a rule where there weren't going to be guests again, but then it changed the dynamic, and shifting to try and trust crew members to do things, and saying, well, they're a professional. Well, I assume we're hiring them. I assume they know the show. They will have studied up on the style, and then I would get the footage back and be like, oh no, this looks This does not look like Tiki Bar. Right. And they're not, for the most part, it was still a niche show, even if there was a large group of people watching on the web. Film professionals, camera operators, and sound guys. They don't have time to do that much research. They're like, they will deliver a professional job. And I remember those episodes lacked soul. Right. I remember feeling that, and I remember starting to feel like the show was starting to lack soul. Yeah. And
how does it come to? Did it come to be a business? Did people invest in it? And you had outsiders?
Yeah. And we scaled up with merchandising and at one point we got into the business of we were making original Tiki mugs, not ourselves, but with a great Tiki mug manufacturer, Tiki Farm. They were our designs. Our characters, a drink bot, the robot became a decanter with a lampshade, and people loved them. And it was. I always liked that idea instead of advertising at that time. Now I think I would reconsider it because it'd just be a lot easier on everybody. But the viewers, rather than asking them for donations, which I also never really liked, but they did. They offered that up. They would buy merchandise. They're these core supporters, but in a small production, trying to obtain designs and check quality control and see proofs of mugs coming in from China and estimating when they're going to arrive, it's just not the best use of a media producer's time.
It's such a weird. Friendster went through a period like that too, where it was huge, growing, blah blah blah. And like nobody would just say, "Why don't we just have ads and try to make them appropriate for people?" It was all these other let's sell shirts, let's charge people to talk at, you can talk to 10 friends, but if you want to have 40, just all these weird ideas, and it just took a long time for people to go, just put up ads.
That's interesting because I would have accepted that way of thinking at that time as well. I remember with YouTube, there was a consensus, there was an understanding that nobody is going to accept an ad or a pre-roll ad or a mid-roll ad or anything. Nobody.
Yeah.
And when they first rolled out, that was the reaction. Yeah. Same thing with movie theater ads. Well, no one's going to stand for this.
Right.
And I believe
I remember the movie
there was a
theater
backlash.
ad. Yeah.
But they're back, and there's nothing you can do about it now.
Right. Yeah, we actually had some positive response when Friendster first had ads because it meant that people knew what the deal was.
Right.
Because before that, they were like, "Oh, I love this thing, but you're just going to start charging me, man, and I'm not going to be able to use it anymore." And all this fear about what was going to happen. And when it was like, "No, it's just an ad, and it's an ad for a movie you'll probably want to see anyway," it kind of calmed all that stress down.
Yeah, I've been seeing, I hate to say it, their algorithm's working well. I'm watching YouTube, and I'm like, "Oh, I want to rewind that. I can't rewind the ad."
Yeah.
Now those are some good ads now.
They're
relevant.
They are getting really good.
Even though I'm using a VPN, I still don't know how they're doing it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I still feel that way. Obviously, there's some good shows on YouTube, but I don't feel like watching them there. And you're in a different mindset there. And
so do you? I mean, is there? Well, so how does it come to an end with Tiki Bar TV? You're not doing that today. We'll talk about what you're doing.
Sure.
Today.
So it came to an end. I guess it was 2009, but there was the economic crash of 2008, and much of the money that was coming in was a lot of speculative investment and based on the idea of advertising was going to go well and things were going to grow. And I think a number of online video, the business model it wasn't working yet, and it wouldn't come till years later when people with a YouTube channel were making six figures, and employing a staff. So we were early, but also a Tiki mug is all this merchandise. The sales really started to drop,
right?
Because that's not a necessity of life. I mean, I would consider it to be,
right?
And so the show became. You guess you get to a point where it started to cost money, and you can't really roll back. It's hard to go back,
right.
and I think a lot of people were getting burnt out, but it was hard. I never really officially, I think, said goodbye to it.
Right. Was it just? I mean, was it just too early? Like if you were 3 years later and on YouTube, would you be making like $1 million a minute?
I would also have to structure it differently. And I do remember one investor pushing for. Essentially, they were. It was more than just an investor. There was an understanding, kind of the shows that were working were people generally addressing the camera and talking about a topic that they knew something about, which is different, a little bit different today. Yeah. I like the shows where the expert is actually addressing the camera, but that was not my talent, nor was what I was doing. I was perceived, I guess, as an actor or performer because I was Dr. Tiki.
Sure.
But I always thought of myself as the filmmaker. I was the guy behind the scenes because that, you tape an episode for a few hours, and then, days or weeks of
Cutting it all
work.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just always on camera because I was always available. And but there was pressure, from other people to say, look, just do your high production value episode. One every week or 2 weeks, and then in between every 2 days, just come out with give a cocktail recipe or do that kind of chat thing. I'm just like, I'm not an expert in any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm doing surreal comedy as a filmmaker. I would love today, and I think there's room for it, and maybe people can point me to a place where this is happening. So as there was talk about joining Revision 3, and I think we were all very enthusiastic about it, both on Jay's side and Kevin Rose and a number of times where we were like, yeah, because it was, what they were doing was really cool.
What was Revision 3 doing at that time?
Well, Dignation was their flagship show, but they were doing just a lot of I don't know, lack of a better word, but guess what Tech TV used to do?
Sure.
The pop culture things that have all been taken over by YouTube, but they had an ad sales team. They had the infrastructure, which I think is necessary for a show like Tiki Bar to survive or to thrive. It would need to be on a network of other shows that were similar to that, and it seems like there should be a place somewhere between YouTube and Netflix. I think Crackle was maybe trying to be that, but where you had these Roger Corman type web series.
Right. It seems like it evolved. Like the video thing never really evolved on the Apple podcast platform.
No, it didn't, did it? No.
It seems like YouTube, and nor did audio. I know people put their podcasts on YouTube somehow, but podcasts really are iTunes, which Apple doesn't really seem to care about. Like,
right.
I think when Pete Alcorn was running podcasting, it meant that it was him and one other guy. Like
right. That
was it.
Yeah. Scott Simpson. Scott Simpson.
You know what Scott Simpson does now?
What does he do?
He's a comedian.
Oh, are you kidding me?
No.
He's hysterical because I remember reading a tweet of his. We were at South by Southwest.
Yeah.
This is back when every tweet was worth reading.
Yeah.
Because they were before the messes showed up with their insults. But and he's like, I think it's time for me to go. Oh yeah, I think, what is it? He says, I got to work on my phone. Every time I try and punch in South by Southwest, it autocorrects me to get home to your wife and kids. And I remember reading that and going like, that is some sharp writing. That is funny. And I never forgot that all these years.
So he has a comedy show in San Francisco.
Well, I've got to see it.
It's called Cheaper Than Therapy.
Yeah.
You probably go tonight if you want.
Yeah.
I forget what nights it is. Cheaper Than Therapy. It's right off Union Square. They have their own space.
Yeah.
So it's him and like 3 other comedians. It's really funny. You go to a comedy show, you're like, oh man, if these guys aren't great, it's awkward.
It hurts. Yeah.
It's great. After the show, and I think he's supporting himself on it as well. It's one of the top rated shows on TripAdvisor, which means that you'll go to a show and there might be like 8 people there from Germany, and that's kind of hilarious. And then after the show, it's downstairs in a bar, and the performers, the comedians, kind of come out and hang with you. They drink with you. There's a piano. They play. It's a great experience. Cheaper Than Therapy.
Wow, that sounds great. And you're reminding me of like all these people that, that I knew, back in the day, and we're talking about, I guess, 2005 to 2008 or 9, that they all had their own lives and ambition. And I think I can probably become so overly focused on my own project that not realizing that these are brilliant people. Yeah. Their lives didn't begin when they, walked up and started talking to you, and they don't fade out when they leave the room. Like Pete Alcorn, I remember I saw him giving a TED talk, not in person because I'm not that important, and I'm like, well, that's it. That's the real Pete.
Yeah.
He's giving a real TED talk.
Yeah.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah, and it was about like population or something, nothing to do with Apple.
Yeah.
He just kind of figured something out and shared it.
And
why do you think there's no? It seems like on YouTube, there've been podcasts or these kind of serialized episodes of Serial, but there doesn't seem to be anything like Tiki. But it doesn't seem where YouTube has gone. There don't seem to be serialized, fun little shows. It's these very specific sort of memey
that's
things.
what I guess I was lamenting, in that shows like mine would have been on late night cable maybe, and it was kind of not like cable. I mean like late night local TV. Or SCTV as well. It was I guess had a similar style, but I don't know. I don't see them. I'm delighted by Kung Fury, which is like a half-hour film, which is, if you haven't seen it, it's absolutely fantastic. And they're now doing a feature of it. It's an outrageous short comedy that really took off with a Kickstarter. So Schwarzenegger is in the feature version.
Oh wow!
And this is I love that movie, but it's. I don't see it anywhere. Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which probably predates Tiki Bars, right around the same time, is a very bizarre, like Channel 4 out of England series that has that kind of mentality. So it's like Channel 4 in Britain is doing this type of material, but nobody. No.
It's just YouTube will have
got to be a demand, like a
niche. They have weird genres of video. And then just lots and lots of them, like the haul videos where somebody buys stuff like makeup and then talks about it.
I want to be kind, but I call it parasitic content, and it really gets me because there are these YouTube shows where they are relying on the content that other people have to have made something. They make it, and then these guys come along and comment on it.
Yes,
and that's all they're doing. Like that's all they're doing, and I don't like. It's make something, man.
Yeah, that is true. They're just these,
and they call themselves creators, and I'm like, you're not. You're overexposing your DSLR. It's stop with this shallow focus. Anyways, sorry, that's me getting to now nerd film talk, but
it is interesting that YouTube did like. There's not some
but they're making all the money. Make no mistake. I think they're
Well, you see these things, and they're like 10 million views of like me and my boyfriend breaking up for a day or something. Like
there's that self-exploitation content then as well, which is really painful to watch because I'm like, how are you? Do you even know what your real life is?
Oh yeah, and I was watching one too where it's like I don't know why I was watching this because YouTube, they get you, and it was like these like I prank my girlfriend, but the prank is like asking her to marry him. But he doesn't mean it. Like, good Lord.
That seems like a Ricky Gervais bit. I mean, that is horrendous. Like, and then you got to go, and then you wonder, like, did they fake it?
It's probably all partially scripted anyway. But it's just like, wow, like, it's crazy.
Yeah, this one where they're exploiting. Essentially, they're exploiting their kids to do it too. Where I'm
that's really weird stuff.
That's a hard one because I'm like. Once the money starts rolling in, you can see that they have millions of subscribers and millions and millions and millions of views. Yeah. The pressure they're putting on those kids, I know what it is because I've worked on sets where there's like a dog that's not performing, and it's a good thing that the the SPCA or the American version of the SPCA, it's the same thing, is it? Is there because everyone loves animals, but you can see the director, not me, but like kind of moving in and going, no, make the dog, make the dog do it. Just make, and if you're unsupervised, you're there at a parent and you have, this video has to get turned around and I have a lovely child, Lachlan, and they at that age will not necessarily want to do that thing at that time.
Right.
And you're like, but we got the lights and we got the camera and we got to turn this video around. And it doesn't look voluntary to me.
It sounds like you don't regret having made the move to YouTube then.
No. No, I don't know. So I guess the shows, there's like Adam Savage. I don't want to confuse him with the Adam Savage, I'm getting it right? I don't want to say, I'm confusing with the columnist.
Adam Savage is he's the whatchamacallit show, the Mythbusters.
Yeah. Okay, there's another Savage, Dan Savage. Yeah. Very different Savages. And they, in that, I admire that kind of a show. I mean, but he's an expert. He really sharing something and being generous with it. And Film Riot, I guess, I like them as well. I think they were on Revision 3. They're a great show. But no, I don't know that I could stand the begging. I mean, I didn't even like to ask people to subscribe to the show. And I think I did it a few times within the episode. Yeah. But I did it in kind of like a really begrudging way. Like,
oh, yeah, the whole genre of like, if you like this.
But everybody does it. And you see Jimmy Kimmel doing it. And I'm like, clearly it gets results. Yeah. Because
it must.
I did a little video with my son. I did not upload it, but as a gag, it was unrelated to YouTube. He was explaining something to me, and I thought, well, this is cute. And so I started rolling. This was when he was like 5. he was explaining, I don't know, how to wear a toque or something, which is a beanie.
Yeah.
And at the end of the video, he goes, "Bye-bye, thanks. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe." And it was adorable and nauseating.
Yeah.
Because
man.
I'm like, we don't watch much YouTube at all.
Right. But what he's seeing, he's learning.
No, that said, I don't mean to be ragging on it or anything like that. I mean, it's. Well, no, I am ragging on it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a podcast. That's what you do.
Yeah.
But you've moved on.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have a company. Like, tell us. So now you run.
So
you founded
then
a
right
company.
at that time, we started as a game company, which is interesting. Right at the time where we realized that the Tiki Bar was no longer going to be
This company's called
sustainable.
Motive, right?
Yeah.
Do you say Motive.io or is that just the website?
We say Motive.io because and Motive.io.
Okay.
Because that's the domain we got and they can't take that away from us. No, because
would
subsequently someone else
Not Motivio.
No, but we do call it that as a joke.
That's the Italian
Motivio. We started as a game company called Rocket Chicken right around 2009, 2010. Because that was not my intention, but some friends of mine were forming a game company, and we're basically soliciting friends for ideas. And I'm like, well, I have this one idea, but it's kind of outlandish, and you can have it. I'm not going to work in the game business, and it turns out they kind of were really inspired by it. So we went and made this thing called Code Runner, which is now will not run on an iPhone, but it was a location-based game that would adapt to wherever you were, and you're a spy with a hacker device, a very 80s-looking interface, and it would pull location data and trigger audio of your handler coming over radio based on where you were, and so you'd hear things like, "All right, well, the suspect was last seen probably heading to that gas station. Don't get too close to the gas station." There's one just right up there, and
cool.
and people, you could play it anywhere in the world. Obviously, if you were out in a field in Nebraska, it was boring because there was nothing very interesting around. But how it worked in the back end is it would have this. It was brilliantly engineered by Ryan Chapman, who's my CTO and CEO, and. I wrote the script as to how it was going to function in terms of the plot. There's this, I guess, fairly linear narrative where it's a lock and key type of mechanic. You have to find this thing to deliver to here to advance the story, steal this file, hack into that bank account, and it would favor things like if you were near a bank, it would bump that to the top of the list, and it would decide this is where the suspect went,
right.
And then it would fall back to an ATM, and so on and so on, and so you just walking around. It was really inspired by a day listening to an audiobook version of George Orwell's 1984, walking in an old rainy part of Vancouver, and feeling like looking down at the phone and going, yeah, this is a computer in my hand now. This doesn't have to be a passive linear thing, right. And I felt like, what would it feel like to be in that world and to have this story commenting on and reacting to what I was doing? And so that was kind of the base of the idea. So that game did very well, I guess, again, in the niche market, which I like to cater to. Very hard to explain what it did or what it meant, and people thought, well, you had to be in a specific town to play it. But of those that discovered it, they were very enthusiastic about it, and but we could not build that game out. It was unsustainable. All the authoring method. I coming from Tiki Bar had all these tools at my disposal, as people do today, like the media authoring tools. And as a filmmaker, you can produce, you can shoot your stuff, edit it, do visual effects on After Effects, and publish it. Put it out to the world. And then coming into games, and I was like, okay, I'll work on this, but what tool do I use? They're like, no, nothing. You write code? No, like just don't. Just write Google Docs and hand the stuff off. And I'm like, well, no. I want to update the content. I want to iterate on it like an editor does in video. And it became apparent that to make a sequel to this game, we would need an authoring tool that was for someone like me. And as it turned out, there was a market for a tool for creating and iterating location-based augmented reality games. But then Pokemon came along, and then we were like, wow, this is big. So clearly we gotta We're going to pivot away from being just a game company to we're going to sell this tool. This will be a technology. We're going to see hordes of game studios making these, and here we are.
Yeah.
Get ready for the gold.
Party's on.
So we met with them and a number. I didn't say anybody specifically because the NDA is all over the place, but they were like, well, you either merge with us, and we're like, oh, okay, well, maybe that, or we don't really need you. And we realized, we were solving a problem that that bigger game companies, our model was licensing software to them. They did not want to rely on third-party software for the core offering of their game, of their title. So that left us with indie game developers who don't have money.
Right.
And we've come to realize that not every customer is a customer you should go for. And if your business is primarily targeting customers that need a lot of support and can't pay very much, you definitely don't want lots of them. Yeah. And that, we kind of looked at our business model and we're like, this is okay, this is no good. And then what brings us to where we are today, that an outstanding customer is Fortune 500 companies and enterprise corporations in VR training. And so this type of our software and our system and our platform, which was originally developed for games and games in very unpredictable settings where the content needed to adapt, is really well suited for VR. And so we looked at that market and studied it and did lots of research. And by heavens, we were right.
That's incredible.
And it's kind of marvelous to have inbound. We have a sales funnel while we're reaching out to people, and then just the inbound calls saying, "I understand you claim to be solving a problem that we need solved."
Do you know what John Cleese did in the 1980s?
What did he do?
So John Cleese, Monty Python, funny guy. He started a training company in the 80s.
Really?
And I think the idea was that he would use humor to help employees to do the training with humor. Right. So it's like, here's how you, fill out your insurance. I don't know what it was, but it was a hugely successful business. And he kind of made the pivot from this hyper creative thing to this very creative but practical for corporations thing.
It seems like, from what I've seen, well, and I was thinking about this, I guess, I don't know, the other day, how Silicon Valley and the Bay Area came to be and came to create great works, and it was this combination of the counterculture artists who you would think, these two people who don't belong together, and yet what they create is fantastic. And I have to say that coming out of filmmaking, where you can have a lot of, I love the craft of filmmaking, and I'm still a filmmaker. You can have people fake it. It's remarkable that people can fake their way along to the point where you're standing on set and you're like, but you worked on this and this and that. And I'm like, this work is no good. You're not even, what do you do? And then working with engineers where they can't fake it. Like, you can't fake your code.
Works or it doesn't.
What's that?
It works or it doesn't.
It works or it doesn't. It's marvelous. And it's really delightful to be working with people who are, so intent on solving problems. I managed to get myself completely off topic, but
Motive.io. So Motive.io is
so it's enterprise. It's a platform enterprise training for VR, and so most of the Fortune 500 companies now are either have a pilot program in doing VR training or have further along, right. and then they're hitting this problem of, okay, well, they're doing this pilot project, and this is great. How do we make changes? How do we iterate? How do we scale this? And there's kind of two directions. One of them is this 360 video, which even being a fan of filmmaking, I am not a fan of 360 video. I don't care for it, and I certainly don't. I don't find it very immersive. I think it probably has its places, but you in VR, you reach out into the world, you pick something up, you move it around, you are in the world when it's CG. Many of these people who are coming to us now have tried 360 video, and they're like, we need to make changes. Now what? We're like, well, if you had actors, I guess find if they're still available. Get your camera crew, go and film the thing. Then, I don't know, try and hide your crew because it's 360 degrees.
Right.
Which means, where do you hide your lights? Which means you can't really use lights, which means it's not going to look great. Yeah. But anyways, and make sure that camera's level, because if it's off its axis, it makes people sick and they feel like they're falling while they put on the VR headset. So then I guess where we come in is that our platform enables someone to work with a developer, or if they already are a developer, they create these kind of beautiful assets, these scenes, these workplace scenarios, whether it's aircraft. I got to be very careful with what I say because I don't want to tip off any NDAs. Lots of interesting like financial like offices where just people are talking to each other.
Now a big, not that it wasn't before, but a big real business that you're working on.
Yeah.
Do you like raise money? Are
Yes.
there venture capitalists in the room?
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we're in the middle of I guess we're closing our first round now, and we bootstrapped. We held off investment for a long time, and we in our first iteration, we were considering a raise for location-based AR. I actually consulted with, got Jay's advice, him and Andy Smith, and they were so generous. So anybody, send any of your your decks. They are doing IoT investments and stuff like that. So it was nice. It wasn't actually related to what we were doing. So it was a very, very hopefully unbiased assessment of what we were up to. And that gave us pause for thought, and we pivoted and landed here. So now, back to we're closing our first round, and then we'll be going for, I guess, Series A venture capital in the new year.
What a story! And you're going to stay up in
and it's so
up in Vancouver. I guess I'm in the center of the world, so you're up in Vancouver.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah, that's where we'll be for now. It's a nice spot, but
are the venture capitalists from Vancouver? Or are they from the Sand Hills?
So the seed, a few of them are actually, and they would be from names that have been heard of. Now I have to be careful again because there's a few startups in Vancouver that are known here, and some obviously move here. So that's exciting. What's exciting is because I remember pitching, when we were a game company, pitching a title, and or pitching the location AR platform. And half of the meeting, we'd have a half-hour meeting, and 29 minutes was explaining what a location-based AR game was. Yeah. And then the last minute would be, and then our technology makes it easy to make it. And we would be like, we lost them in the beginning. But now when you have a product that meets a market and the budgets are good and it's like I don't feel like I'm wringing my hands and apologizing for taking someone's time. I'm like, Also, VR is so cool,
right?
It combines filmmaking and live theater in a certain way. Like the skills of a filmmaker do apply in VR. Yeah. So we try to make I'm there and making our demos look sparkly.
So you're doing what you want at a company that's on to a big business that sells to the Fortune 500. It's fabulous. Do you look back at like Tiki Bar TV? Like, is it a small little receding thing now, or do you look back fondly? Or
Yeah, I have great fondness for it, actually, and I really do. And you know what makes me feel good is that I keep hearing from people that were a part of that are saying things like, "Hey, when you're ready, I've got the fez. I'm still there," And I think there was probably a certain time in my life where I would have gone, well, it would just be sad to go back to that, as though there was nothing else going on in life. But then you move on and you look back and go, well, going back to it just for the pure joy of it, that's very different. And then you kind of see it with clarity and go, what would be a fun thing to do with it?
Right.
And seeing how series that were thought to be done and over have proven that they have life in them, namely shows that are coming back on Netflix. And not all of them do, but surprising number of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great story.
Tosca Musk now is the CEO of Passionflix, which is a romance. It's like Netflix for romance novels, best-selling romance novels. Have you met her? Have you?
No.
Oh, you should. You should have her on the show.
I will find her.
Yeah, she's related to Elon Musk.
Oh, of course.
And Kimball Musk.
Okay.
And May Musk, the Musk family. Yeah, they're a wonderful group of people, and they were very, very supportive. Yeah, Kimball as well. Yeah, I'm just having memories. Yeah.
Well, what a fantastic path. How do people? Well, first of all, watch the YouTube. Is it on Apple Podcasts anymore?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I have to go check the feed.
It's on YouTube because
so Apple recently. Okay, it's on YouTube. Some I guess uploaded, but it's kind of hodgepodge. Yeah. Some people still buy T-shirts. I have like an automated. Funny. I know it kind of delights me. I have it up there just for the sake of like, why not? But my point being lost at this point. Yeah, if it's well, I guess Apple recently split off music. They what did they do?
I don't know what they did.
But actually, so I better go check the feed and see if it's healthy. And I think half stuff is going through FeedBurner, and I don't actually know what the real RSS feed
get it
is.
lined up so people can watch it.
Because I've been trying to change the thumbnail for, I would say, 10 years. Which is kind of like a rough looking early thumbnail of Lala.
Yeah.
And I can't figure out where it's like some obsolete RSS feed through where is FeedBurner? Does FeedBurner exist? Do you even know what I'm talking about? And
it's on some server somewhere.
And I think I tried to log in. It's like, I don't know who you are, and there's no way you're getting in here. I'm like, all right. So I should fix the feed.
Yeah.
I should fix the feed.
If not, there's a few on YouTube. So how do people find you now? Motive.io?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
Twitter.
Interesting. Yeah, Twitter. So I Twitter. I am Dr. Tiki, DRK. We haven't had cocktails yet. Yeah. I know this one. DRTIKI.
Yep.
At Dr. Tiki. On Twitter, that's probably the best way to reach me, or they can reach me at motive.io.
All right.
Jeff at motive.io.
Fabulous.
I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear from people.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been great.
I think we've done this. All right. Well, this has been the Something Adventure Podcast. I will talk to you next time.